So everybody has hopefully stopped by our booth with Cisco AppDynamics, and we're going to talk to you today on how to get out of the war rooms, spend more time at lunch. A little bit about me. My name's Jason Myers. I've been in the industry a little over 20 years, and I actually started out on a help desk. I've moved my way all the way up, been a partner, I've been a customer, I've ran data centers, moved applications into the cloud, avid outdoorsman, reside in Franklinton, North Carolina. Show of hands out here, who is in operations? Nobody? Okay, we got a few. How many of you are application side, developers, coders? Great. Anybody still get called in on pager duties, or notified out, have to get on war rooms, go into fighting fire? Yeah, we all love that, don't you? I really do, because that's me. When I talk about fighting fires, I'd rather be doing this type of fighting fire than going into the application portions of it. You're probably wondering, okay, at 2 o'clock, yeah, this is definitely not the application or the network that's gone down. We're going to make sure that we know that from now on. But you're asking, why are we talking about firefighting in this? Reason why? Standards. As a firefighter, we got the National Fire Protection Agency standards. If we go into one of these scenes, like you can see the ones down there, we may have multiple teams that are showing up. We all have to be trained to the same level, because you might not just have your department, you may have 4 or 5, 6 different departments from different states, different agencies coming in there. We have to know as we go in there that the guy who's beside us has gone to the same standards, that they're trained with the same way. We've got to have the same equipment. It's got to be able to match. We can't go in there with one set of threads on a hose and we're trying to hook up, and then all of a sudden we can't hook up a hose line because it's not a standard. That's why they actually went through and started doing everything in standards. And in the fire industry, we got rid of proprietary nomenclature, we got rid of proprietary tools, so that everybody has the same common language that we're going in there. Now, the question that I will ask you is, why are we not doing that when it comes to monitoring? Application team has a tool, networking team has a tool, database team has a tool. None of us are talking the same language. Why? Now, the biggest question that we've gotten asked, why is Cisco at an open source application development conference? And I imagine a lot of you are wondering the same exact reason why we're here. Well, we are actually the 5th largest software company by way of acquisition. We're doing more software as a subscription, and we're writing more application code than any others. And you may have heard 2 weeks ago, we're about to make that even bigger. We put out the intent that we're going to acquire Splunk. That's going to put us more into the security, more into the observability realm as this goes through. If you come down to the booth and ask us, what does this mean? We have no idea. We were just told that we're going to acquire them. Probably take us 8 to 9 months to get through all that, and then we'll go through it. Anybody use any of these in their coding? Everybody in here's got some familiarity with it? Great. What's the one thing that all of these have in common? Anybody got a guess? No? Open telemetry. Everybody's using open telemetry in any one of those applications. Why is that important with Cisco? We are actually one of the largest contributors to the OTel standard. We have more people inside of Cisco that are writing to open telemetry, helping to get those standards based across. What does that mean when we start looking at this from an observability practice? You've all been in one of these rooms, right? We go out there, it's the network team. No, it's not. It's the database team. No, it's not. It's the infrastructure team. We've all been there. I've been in many, many of them. Been, working as a customer, working as a partner, and now at Cisco, we have to help solve some of these things. While everybody's in there going, what's going wrong? Why is it not working? Application team says, hey, my code's working fine. Network team says, there's not a problem, because it's never the network's fault, right? Yeah, sometimes it is. All the meanwhile, it's a mean time to innocence. It's not a mean time to resolution. It's who can sit there and put the finger on the nose and say, it's not it. I'm not the one to do it. We've got to get out of that mindset, because while we're doing that, your customer's having a bad experience. Brand loyalty is no longer the name of the company. Brand loyalty is your user having a good experience. Now, as we start going through this, how many in here has used Uber? Anybody like Lyft better? All right, we've got some for both of them. But here's the thing, every one of us has done this. You've gone on to Uber, started to get an Uber ride, it's taken forever, you can't get it to load, can't get anybody to respond, what'd you do? Closed the app and went to Lyft, right? Customers are doing that. When everybody knows on Prime Day, you go out there to try to buy something, you get that funny little dog that pops up and says, oops. Okay, great, that's great that it was an oops, but you just lost revenue as a customer. That customer is now going to your competitor. We've got Fidelity out here, Capital One is around here, banking industries, they're huge with this. It's all about the end user experience. So how do we change all of this? Full stack observability. When we start talking about full stack observability, it's breaking down those silos, it's breaking down all of the finger pointing that's going on, and it's getting everybody into the same page, because what's important is how is that user's experience going through there. They don't care how complex your environment is. They don't care what you're writing it in. They want it to work. They want it to work right. They want it to work every time, and they want to have a flawless user experience as they're going through it. When we start talking about how many tools are out there that are doing it, 68% of the companies that are out there say they got too many tools. We've actually done some studies, and we've had third-party companies come out and do studies. On average, every customer has a minimum, when I say customers, companies have 10 plus monitoring tools that do a different thing. Now, as the application team, how many guys in here have actually seen what the network team looks at and been able to actually go in there, use it, and make sense out of what they're doing? Yeah, I don't even do it. Like, that's the packets back and forth. I can't do subnetting to save my life. I don't know why, I just can't figure out how to do the math. I also don't code very well. What I do very well is I look at what's wrong with what the customer wants to see, because what the customer wants to see is what your executives are going to want to see. By taking this with full stack observability, we're minimizing the tool sprawl. And it's not just Cisco tools that we're talking about. It's actually being able to create data repositories and, wow, that got real loud all of a sudden. Data repositories, bringing all the different tools in, bringing in Cisco tools, bringing in network monitoring tools, bringing in tools like Jaeger, and writing one complete dashboard in one complete environment so that now we're getting that mean time to resolution. And I'll give you an experience that I went through. How many of you, before the pandemic hit, remembered when we were flying around, going on airplanes, you get your flight would get delayed, you'd get that notification on your phone and say, hey, your flight was delayed, your gate changed. You have already been at your destination for an hour and a half. You're like, this would have been great to notice before I was running through the airport trying to find my new gate. Or when you checked out of that hotel, you finally got your email receipt 3 days later. We were working with the company that was doing that. It's not the airlines that actually send out those. That's outsourced out to another company. They had been working with this problem for 6 months, and they were under contract, and they had SLAs by TSA. Those gate notifications, they were supposed to have those within 60 seconds. And every time they didn't, they got fined. This company lost 3 major airlines using their system to go through that. Because if you start thinking about, okay, you got on average 250 people on a plane, you've got 300 flights a day at a small airport, a couple thousand at some place like O'Hare, you start doing that for 6 months, add up the amount of money that this company was getting fined. So we got brought in, they said, hey, can you help us figure this out? Okay, let's start implementing some tools so we can start seeing this. Networking team, it's not us. I got 2 green lights on each end of it. My link is together, we're running fine. All right, what's the application team say? Application says we don't have enough memory in our server. Okay, but is your code processing correctly? Yep, starts at line 1, goes to however many ever 1,000 lines of code, it's running all the way through. Not a problem in the world. That only leaves the infrastructure team for the data center. All right, guys, application team saying you're not giving them enough memory. Like, Jason, we gave them 128 gig of memory, they're not using but 8. Okay, that's a problem. If you've got 128 gig of memory on a machine, you're only using 8, where's the problem? By putting this all the way through with full stack observability, what's the one thing that nobody checked? Java. Nobody checked the JVM. Nobody got the middleware team in to go right-size the heap to take advantage of the 128 gig of memory. So from a JVM perspective, they only thought they had 8 gig of memory. But guess what? It was also the network problem too. There was a misconfiguration with a route going across. You start adding small things together, they compound. We brought all this together, and now we were able to show the application team, hey, here's where the problem lies. We also did find that they did have a code line that on average was running 23 milliseconds. Not bad, but not great. But everything else in that waterfall was running 0.01 milliseconds, 1 millisecond. How great would it be as an application team, you can go in and you can see exactly what the network looks like, exactly what the infrastructure looks like, but then the infrastructure teams can go in there and say, hey, your application, it works, it runs. We're not saying it doesn't run, but I have one line of code that's running 23 milliseconds. Why is that running so much longer? Is it supposed to do that? Another example where we had this was one of our customers, they had a database. When it started out with a small number of tables, they were rewriting every time they added a new table instead of doing an append. Now this thing got massive, and instead of just appending to the database, they were rewriting it every time. Somebody who had written it had left, gone off. Now that we figured this out, the application team was actually able to sit there and take that one database call that was taking the 23 milliseconds, get that line of code, send that over to the developers, and they could see exactly what they were seeing. That's what we're talking about when we talk about full stack observability, is going from the end user, when they log into a mobile app, when they log into a web app, following it all the way down to the database connection, back out through the applications, and bringing all of this together. So that helps break down all the silos. Now everybody's on the same page. You want to still use your tools? Great, you can still use your tools. We're integrating them all together. And that's where we talk about cloud native. We're actually now stopping and going away from the instrumentation of agents. Now, if you're still running an on-premise, you still have everything running there, great, we can still do the application implementation with agents. But now what we're doing is for OTel, we're doing cloud native. We're not ingesting agents into it. We're pulling all that data out of OpenTelemetry. Now we can feed this into our platform that as a developer, if you find something better that you want to do, because you guys know your code better than we do, what we're going to allow you to do is take those OTel standards, you can create a package, and we have a marketplace now where you can actually go in there, write your own modules and your own codes. We're opening it up as Cisco. Cisco never opened up their code when it came to hardware and networking, but when we start talking about applications, we're giving the power back to the developers, because you guys know your application better than us, but we want to help tie that business context, because while you're running your application, do you understand how that's tying to what your business is trying to do, which is make money so that we can all get paid, so we can all be here to do it. That's where we're helping, is bringing all that context and that correlation together so that now everybody sees what's going on. And who loves to go try to tell the CEO what's going right in the company? Nobody likes to. I hated doing it. We got dashboards for them. Everybody's got a dashboard now. We can actually make role-based access dashboards and reports that they can see what matters to them. If you want to see how much you have in a cart or as a company, what is the revenue that's out there, so that you can sit there and say, hey, you know what? Based on everybody that's using our e-commerce site, we have $7 million in revenue setting in the checkout right now. How do we get that better? How do we get that to actually close? Are we having a problem when we go from add to cart to checkout, it's slowing out and people are leaving? We can now set those things together and actually start showing that to everybody. So at this point, before we go into questions, I'm gonna bring Eric up, and I can tell you all this stuff and it sounds great. He'll actually show you how it works. Nope, and our AV got left.
Can you guys hear me if I talk like this in the back? No. friends. We're friends. We'll stand close. So my name's Eric Schauger, sales engineer at AppDynamics, and this is gonna be fun. I can see it down here. So let's go over a little demo, show you guys how to connect up to your cloud provider, and then what it looks like inside the controller here. So, and that's not it. All right, and let's get this out of here. Okay, so if I go over to Cloud Connections here, I can connect up to AWS, Azure, Google, whatever you guys want. Roles and permissions, you set up the username, user account, and your roles for here, right? We go through next, and then I'm going to get a list of all the services that we have in AWS, Azure, Google. I'm just going to select on whichever ones that I want to monitor, and then go ahead and hit save. And then when I go back to the home page here for Observe, this is going to pull in all the services that you guys chose to monitor inside your environment. You may have multiple dev teams that have different tenants. You could have multiple tenants in here, 6 different Azure tenants, AWS, doesn't matter. It's all going to show up right here in the panel for you, right? So all the container services, Kubernetes. Then you're going to instrument OpenTelemetry SDK into your applications. So you add that in there, you point it to your collector, you point the collector to us, point it to whoever, but here you're going to point it to us, and then we're going to correlate all that information together with that underlying infrastructure and services that we just linked into. A fundamental part of AppDynamics is business transactions. So it's ways that users or services are interacting with your application. We pull these out of the box based off all the melt data, all the metrics, logs, events, traces that we're getting from OpenTelemetry. These are going to be things like login, checkout, add to cart when it comes to an e-commerce app, maybe running a specific report or something, right? And then I'm looking at the last hour here inside the controller, but I could set this to a specific time range when users were having issues logging in, right? Because nobody's going to call you right when they have an issue. It's always going to be, days later or an hour later. So let's take a look. Let's say we're having an issue with login right here. I get some metrics on the right-hand side about response time, errors per minute, number of calls, and then I can dive in and get more information. I think the coolest part here is on the left-hand side here. So I'm looking at this one business transaction. We can see vulnerabilities inside the Kubernetes deployment, so any issues with a container, things like that. I can see the services and service instances that are running this business transaction. It's running in this one Kubernetes cluster, one namespace, the specific pod and container and hosts that are running this business transaction. So I'm really honing in on where an issue might be with this one functionality of my application, right? So again, we're getting response time, calls per minute. I'm going to blame it on not being my computer, why it's not showing up. But the next part is these traces, related traces, right? We're pulling this in with OpenTelemetry, all these user interactions. So as I dive into related traces, I'm looking at the users that just went through that one business transaction, just trying to log in, right? So somebody calls in, has an issue with login. I'm going to be able to come in here, look at that business transaction, jump into the related traces, those user sessions going through my application. I get a duration, what time this happened. I could search and filter by this. But let's look at this one user's interaction. I'm going to dive into the trace here. We have ways to view this. I like the span view. It shows all the different spans that this one user touched during this interaction with login. I can scroll down and get a waterfall view. As I click on these, I can see there's a, looks like a select statement, right? Is the majority of my wait time. This user. There we go, that's great. So it's a select statement over on this side. And that is, again, his computer, not mine.
Not mine either.
Give me a second. Just refreshing. So again, we're looking at that select statement right here. So if I scroll up, I'll see the span view. And it's highlighted over here on this side. So as I click around here, The right-hand side is going to be different information, attributes about that specific span, right? So I can click through, drill in. If there's any logs associated with that, again, pulling in from OpenTelemetry, more logs about this specific span inside the trace. But the issue does look like it's with a database query, right? I can scroll down, see the attributes. I can see where this is running. I can get the actual select statement for this database query from here. But say I do want to look at the logs, right? This one's showing some logs with a blue e-commerce service. So this is with a specific pod that's having an issue that we caused in this environment. And from here, I can search on the logs. I can search for info. I can search for anything. It's going to pull it up inside here with all these logs, and then getting information as I click on each one. So I can read through the log if I want. I can search surrounding logs inside this environment. So logs leading up to this from the container, pod, or workload. Pretty cool stuff, right? All OpenTelemetry inside your app. So open standard, push the melt data to us, hook into your cloud environment, right? And we're going to correlate everything for you and show you where the problem is and get out of those war rooms. Jason talked about opening up the platform, right? Opening up so you guys can create things, partners can create things. Cisco's made a couple for Cost Insight, Workload Optimizer, but then we also have companies like Evolutio building a fintech. So financial data, pulling out of your application, information out of your application, being able to represent it in a dashboard and baseline information. Things like VMware, we have a vSphere integration and a capacity forecasting. So that's, yeah.
Secure app you want to talk about?
Yeah, so the security, so this is looking at the Kubernetes workloads, right? So what version is my pod container running? What vulnerabilities are inside of here? So we're correlating all that information all the way down to the workload environment. And it's pretty cool. And then I can show you a little bit of the cost insights too here for the Kubernetes deployment. So I can see all the business transactions that are running on this one specific Kubernetes environment. We're bringing CO2 in here, so renewable or sustainable environments, but getting a cost or a cluster score. So what's the utilization of my Kubernetes deployment, right? Like, am I under-spec'd or over-spec'd? This one looks a little bit over-spec'd. I could probably reduce some CPU and memory in here and get a better score for that cluster environment, right? Cost over time. I could dive right into logs when it comes to Kubernetes right here. So you can either look at through the business transaction lens or through the infrastructure lens. And that's all for now. If you guys have more questions, come down to the booth. We can talk through any more of this, answer any technical questions you guys want.